You're listening to A Creative Excuse, presented by Echo a Mano. As you can see, this episode is being released just a week after the last one. Now that we're all spending a lot more time at home, I thought I'd go to a weekly release schedule. And next week, we'll begin the lockdown episodes, all done remotely, which has actually worked out pretty well in terms of getting the tech up and running. So the gallery is, of course, still closed. You can still visit our website and buy work online. I'm shipping things free right now, or local delivery in Santa Fe. Would love to have your support if you're in a position to buy work right now. We have price points that start at $6, t-shirts, Echo Mono t-shirts, little prints, things like that. But totally understand, a lot of folks are thinking about how to pay rent and buy food, and it's real. Our intention is to have Jason Garcia's show up and hung at the gallery on April 3rd. We won't be having an opening, but Jason and I are hoping to do a live stream artist talk walkthrough of the exhibition on April 3rd. That's next Friday. So stay tuned to our social media channels for that information. And then the April show was scheduled to be Alfonso Barrera from Oaxaca, and the border is closed, and not sure when that's going to open, not sure when the gallery is going to open. So rather than, we just didn't know. Of course, everything's still uncertain. So that show is being pushed to the fall. And Jason's show will run through May 25th, which is Memorial Day. So the hope is that gives us an opportunity to have some kind of event in person. If not, at the very least, some open gallery hours. So that's the gallery news for now. This episode is Andrea Hanley, the chief curator at the Wheelwright Museum. This episode was recorded way back in January, which feels like a million years ago. And it would have been a totally different conversation today. It's so strange to experience how different it feels so I don't know, naive, is that the right word? I don't know. It's a different time, and everything has changed so quickly. Anyhow, it's a great episode, and I had a really great chat with Andrea, and look forward to getting to know her a bit more too. Anyhow, that's all for now. Going to start releasing episodes every week now, so hopefully you enjoy that as well. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you haven't already, that really helps get the word out about the podcast. Okay, enjoy Andrea Hanley.
All right. Andrea Hanley. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You bet.
Like I said, this is just an opportunity for me to kind of get to know people a little bit better.
That's great.
I tend to projectify everything and make it into a project rather than be a normal human being and say, hey, let's go have coffee.
Right.
I make it into a project.
But you know what? That's great. I think that's really, really great. And it's a really great way for people to get to know your community and folks that you're interested in meeting, and then they get to meet them too.
Totally. Yeah. And then I get to sit down and have a conversation with you.
Right on.
Yeah. So we're here at the Wheelwright, and you're the chief curator here.
Right.
Yeah, and relatively recent, like October, maybe?
Actually, August.
August,
Yeah, August was, so it sort of feels like it's only been a month, but yeah, it's kind of been, maybe 5 or 6 months now at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. How is that going? Like, how does it feel to come into an organization like this that, has an exhibition schedule already going, that has like a momentum, and then you're like the new kid on the block?
It's actually been really, really great. The director is amazing here. Everyone here is amazing. And, I came in, to, exhibitions, one that I actually created while, when I just came in, and it was a collections-based, exhibition. I can talk a little bit about that later. And then, they worked with an Andrew Mellon fellow, who was here, who did the Laughter and Resilience, Humor and Native American Art exhibition. And it was curated by a young woman named Denise Neal, who was Delaware and Cherokee. So I came in at kind of the last end of that and sort of did a little bit of working with them on language, and then organizing it a little bit more, adding a little bit more, here and there. But it was a really wonderful process. And, the idea of being able to work on an exhibition that's about humor, is not as serious as you think. So,
right.
So yeah, it was really, really, really wonderful. And it was fun kind of thinking about ways that humor plays this role in Native American tribes, which is really exciting for me too, to really kind of think about. And it's wonderful in the sense that, when you look at Indian country, you look at artists and you look at creative people and you look at people just in general, that humor is such an important form. But, a lot of times when you get into like art history, you get art historians who have really kind of in some ways devalued humorous works of art when it's compared to other sorts of, subject matter. But, when it's used by, I think, Native American artists, in all its various manifestations, it can really kind of do a lot of different things in an Indian country. So it can soften criticism, it can delineate social boundaries, it can critique misconceptions about Indian people in a light way. And, for me, it's always that Indian humor can be so silly, but it can also be so biting. And it can teach you a lot. Yeah. So it was just really, it was a wonderful experience. And the team here is so amazing. And it's gotten really, really amazing reviews at this point, too. I think it was First American Art Magazine named it one of the top 10 Native art events of 2019, which is great. Yeah. Which shows us that we're all doing the right thing, which is great.
That's great. I was Jason Garcia's in the show, and I was having lunch with him today, and we were talking a little bit about these sort of like interventions of technology or pop culture in what people might call quote unquote traditional scenes. And one of the things that came to mind for me, and I'm sure, he was just like, yeah, duh, was just the idea of looking at Native people in the past with it as like erasure, like erasing the fact that, like, I think a lot of Western European mindset is that Native people exist in the past. Right. And unless you're in a community where there are a lot of Native people, it might be easy to think that way.
Right.
And I think one of the things that Jason's work does in a way that's kind of like almost like sneaky is like you have like, if you take away the iPod, right? This is a painting that, could represent somebody, 300 years ago or now, Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting as a way, because like on the surface it has a humor about it,
right?
But then it kind of sneaks around and being like, hey.
I agree, and there are a lot of different sections in that exhibition, and when you're talking about things that for example Jason was bringing up, it's really important because you look at, like, for example, one of the sections is cartoons and cartoonettes. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you look at, for example, as a part of contemporary society, Native artists have incorporated sort of mainstream cartoon characters like Mickey Mouse or Tweety Bird or SpongeBob,
Baby Yoda.
Yeah, exactly. If I could say it, SpongeBob, SquarePants, into their works. Exactly. But I think that what Native artists do in that sense is they really sort of try to reach out to broader and larger audiences and connect their experiences through Native humor as well, and again, offer sort of this social commentary that we're very contemporary people. We live in the same place that you do.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for people to know, in a larger society that, we like Mickey Mouse, or we watch cartoons, or this has had an impact on my life, or we have these similar human experiences. And I think that's really important to think about as well.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So it's a good thing.
Yeah. How long is the show up?
Show Up is for, I think it's up for another year.
Oh, great.
So it's going to be around for a while.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think so too. And we've had a lot of really amazing people come through already to see the show. So I'm really impressed with how exciting it is, and how excited people are about the show, which is wonderful. And then I did a smaller show in our smaller gallery here at the Wheelwright, in a collection-based exhibition, and I called it Conversations, Artworks and Dialogue, and it's a Daniel E. Prahl collection. Mm-hmm. And this is another show that'll probably be up for a year. And really sort of this is a really interesting collector who also was a volunteer here. He was a longtime supporter of the Wheelwright. And when he passed away, he bequeathed about 320 major Native American artworks with an emphasis on paintings and drawings and poetry and sculpture. And he gave that to the collection, I think, back in 2017. And for me, kind of looking at that collection, it was such a beautiful kind of relationship that he had. A lot of people here at the museum didn't know that he had such a nice relationship with so many different artists here in town and in the Southwest region. And so he had just lots and lots and lots of work in his house. So if you can imagine that he gave us works, he also gave works to the Museum of International Folk Art, and specific to his Hispanic collection. So a lot of work in at his home and collection, or in his closets and underneath his bed. And
was there a particular focus in the collection?
It's interesting because they didn't really represent a style of work, but they really kind of reflected that collector Prahl's personal interest in his friendships with artists, which I thought was so fascinating.
Right.
He wrote on the backs of these really interesting, these like catalog cards, and they sort of offered like this really amazing and in-depth kind of narratives about his interaction with artists, including descriptions of their conversations.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Where they went and had lunch.
Yeah.
And then really in-depth description of the piece. And so you really kind of got this great idea of the conversations he was having, the meals and the artworks he was acquiring. And clearly, that was part of it, but it was also the idea of him really valuing these relationships that he was having with all these really neat artists as well. So it's kind of like these friendships were just right in tandem with him collecting the work as well.
Yeah. And
it was fantastic. So, he was collecting the most amazing people. Norman Akers, who is a painter, Osage painter, is a professor at the University of Oklahoma. Helen Hardin, her mother, Pablito Velarde, her daughter, Marguerite. It just goes on and on. Alan Hauser, Linda Loma Haftawa, Dan Dominga, Arlo Laminga, Diego Romero.
That's awesome.
It just keeps going on and on and on and on and on. So I sort of included some of the language from some of the cards next to the pieces that he selected. So, for example, there was one that was it focused in on an artist, and his name was Earl Biss.
Oh, yeah.
And Earl Biss was Crow, who was born in 1947, and he passed in 1998, and he did a piece called Rain Dance, and he purchased that piece actually at the Squash Blossom Gallery in Illinois back in 1978. And when he talked about the piece, he was sort of like, this is my first visit to the gallery. It's one of my first shows that I got to see of Earl's. And he said, and this is the first time I met Earl. And he said, and even though this was a small piece, I thought it was the best one in the show. Mm-hmm. He said, later at a reception held by Bud and Joan Town, who were the gallery owners for Earl told me that he thought I was from the Internal Revenue Service since I wore a dark blue suit. So after the reception, I dropped Earl and his girlfriend off their downtown Chicago hotel, which wasn't too far from the Motel 6 I stayed at. Uh-huh. It was really great. That's stuff so like cool. That.
Wow. I love that. And I can relate in a way too. Like, I feel like when I do an exhibition with somebody, or I, want to carry an artist's work, like, it's really important to me to have that connection. Yeah. I don't look at art as these things that exist in a vacuum that are just like, oh, it's just this object that somebody made. But it's like, to me, it's all about the relationships, because to the artist, of course, who made it, there's all kinds of relationships that go into what comes out of them, right? Whether that's inner or outer or family or friend or just relationships in a broad sense.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I want that to happen between me and an artist, and then with a purchaser or a collector and the artist and the artwork, so that there's this like cycle going on.
Right.
And to me, it just like feeds on itself.
When I was younger, and when I was a little bit older too, I worked in galleries. So in college, I worked for some of the great gallerists back in the day, Suzanne Brown, who was partners with Elaine Horowitz, who had a really wonderful art gallery here in both Scottsdale and in Santa Fe. And then Elaine, or Butler, Marilyn Butler.
Yeah.
And both of them were wonderful. And then as I got older, I worked for the Heard Museum and was the person, or the first director of the Berlin Gallery, which was a gallery that supported contemporary Indian artists. And I always loved being able to have another, really nice relationship with artists. And it always helped if they were nice. You know what I mean? Oh. It always helps to sell their work if they're nice. You know what I mean? And it was always amazing to be able to meet people for the first time and kind of like, if you didn't, if they were really amazing artists or really important artists, to be able to meet them and kind of get a sense of who they were was just so like one of the best things about being able to sell their work and to get so excited about it,
Totally.
I think that happened with Rick Bartow with me. I didn't know what kind of person Rick Bartow would be. The work is like so, Francis Bacon-y and, like really, in your face and dark and crows and hands and he gesture, he really uses his hands to get into the work, or he did. And then to meet him, you're kind of thinking maybe he might be sort of this dark, brooding person, but ended up being like one of the most lovely souls I've ever met. And it just always helps, and it always is lovely to be able to, sell work when it's like when you're in a position like that.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's all about those connections, It's just like the connection between people. It just enhances everything, and it's like, why are we here on this planet? It's like, it's not just to like do tasks, you know what I mean? It's like, while we're doing those things, while we're, selling somebody's art, we might as well be making connections with them.
Exactly.
I mean, like, why are we really here, guys?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think so. And I think that idea of Daniel Prahl, this really wonderful person who was doing this collecting and then working with all these different gallerists from all over, and then working with artists too, I think is a really important thing to think about, in terms of how your business works, and how other galleries and museums work. I mean, it's sort of like the perfect kind of way that you want sort of someone who cares or who gets bonded to an institution or gets bonded to a gallery or to an artist, that they support them in a way that, supports their practice, supports the gallery, perhaps supports the museum, and then when they pass away, they bequeath this work to a museum so other people can enjoy it as well. I mean, there's just like so many different things that I think that are so important in terms of that relationship, all of those different relationships that make what you and I do so important. Yeah, for sure. So you have some of that work on view right now. Yes.
Is there anything in the exhibition that goes into those relationships, those kind of documentations about this is what we ate or things like that? I think that's so cool.
Yeah, there was so many. I'm trying to see if there was one in here that was sort of like, I'm trying to go through my notes here.
Because I could almost see an event where people could come and have that same meal, or something like that kind of almost puts them into the shoes of the collector, which could be kind of fun.
Exactly. I am trying to find one here. And there's one about Dan Dominga, and I'll kind of go a little bit because it's a huge quote, but it was like he says, I've seen this piece hanging in the gallery very much. There were two, but one had sold, and the corn symbolism pieces had never quite done it for me. But this long piece seemed to tell a series of symbols that somehow related in a sequential manner. Frances, who is Dan Dominga's wife, said she put both images in an ad in a new issue of a magazine and didn't think I could afford it. But Dan and Frances offered to take a piece in trade and also gave me a discount. So I thought about it, and the piece grew on me, and finally I went in to sign on the dotted line. In the meantime, they had taken me to dinner at Julian's, and they kept the piece until we got together for a Sunday brunch at the El Dorado Hotel. Afterwards, they came here to see it at my house, and they brought the piece.
That's so cool. I love those backstories, these little, the context and the sort of how did this come to be?
Right. Yeah. I did too. And, he had a really interesting relationship with a number of different people. And I think that, and had really wonderful conversations with artists about, taking a different turn here, or taking a different turn here, or kind of had them think a little bit outside of maybe their practice. And I thought that was really interesting as well. And I think that Diego Romero really talked a little bit about that. And I thought that was wonderful. He had talked about, I think it was like he had this relationship with Dan Paul for over 25 years. And at the time, he said he could remember meeting him in the parking lot of Gallery 10, which is in Scottsdale. And he said he sold him prints and original drawings outside of the trunk of his car. Mm-hmm. And then but he had met him a long time ago, and before his career had taken off, and over the years he had commissioned him to take and make several pieces of pottery. But he also loved to collect a lot of the original drawings that I think a lot of the pots were based off of, in those spaces in between. Yeah. So there's just these really beautiful little neat things that you start hearing about that influence different artists and how they work with collectors, and I really love that. And appreciate it.
It's so cool to hear about collectors that are doing it right too.
Right.
Because we hear enough about the financial aspects of it, which that's certainly a part of collecting. But when you have somebody that's truly cares about the artists,
right?
That's priceless.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's really important. I love it, and I think that that's ideally what you want to have happen. Yeah. I really do. I'm excited about, I've never really been able to see the Wheelwright Museum collection in person. And so for me to be able to go in and see all of these really wonderful things that people have collected is just, amazing. And actually, inspired me to start thinking about the collection and what it means, and what it says to people, in terms of museum collections. And so, there's over, like, I think 11,000 objects in this collection, and it includes a number of different things like paintings and sculpture and jewelry and metalwork and carvings and baskets and folk art and textiles and people, a lot of Navajo, but a lot of other Native people from the Southwest region. And so I just thought that we would try to figure out a way for there to be an artist focus where they could, and an artist driven discovery and this kind of creative process where we could have some sort of collaborative engagement with the collection. And so what I'm hoping will happen is that we'll be able to open up the collection for unutilized parts of the collection by opening up to a particular artist. And then we'll kind of act as this creative catalyst for some sort of installation, some sort of exhibition to be housed at, the Wheelwright. And so really sort of what will happen is that the artist will come in and they'll create an installation in the residency that they'll be there. So they'll do an exhibition that'll be specific to incorporating, I was thinking possibly maybe silverworks. So that could mean rings and bracelets and necklaces and earrings and belt buckles or spurs or forks or boxes or whistles or candelabras or shot glasses, all these different types of things. And so hopefully an artist could come in, set about arranging them in some sort of composition in the abstract, and then, document it and hopefully have some kind of really, it turned out to be some sort of really impressive installation, and what will be really impressive about it, I guess, is its material truth, because the objects will really kind of speak for themselves. But it'll also allow contemporary artists to come in and kind of contemplate and understand a museum collection in a completely different way. Yeah.
Well, and that hands-on, I love the idea of having the installation itself, this presentation, this exhibition, would be an art piece. Right. And of course, as curators, we introduce creativity into the work, but it can sometimes lean into the academic. Right. And so I love the idea of bringing an artist in, and it becomes much more about, the relationships of objects through an artist's lens.
Exactly.
I love that.
And it creates another relationship with artists connecting to collections. But it also reflects a lot on the history of the museum. And then it also celebrates kind of these new kind of ways or artistic endeavors and interventions, I guess, in a sense, that experiment with like future methodologies of emerging contemporary Indian art or Native art. Yeah. And so I'm hoping, that that'll be an upcoming project that I can work on soon and kind of think about thoughtfully, and hopefully it'll be just, as amazing as I kind of think it will be.
I'm sure it would bring things out that maybe haven't been seen in a long time.
Exactly. Or have never been seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a collection that came in recently, and it was just sort of this beautiful collection, and it just had numerous amounts of ashtrays, silver stamped ashtrays, and lighters and things that you would never think about. There were, and I think I've already mentioned them, but there was one. It was a whistle. It was a whistle. And it was actually a part of a series of whistles that had been made for a pueblo for all of their police departments. So they all had these beautifully, made whistles that had kind of, these very particular ways of looking. They probably had a nice little sound to them as well. We didn't blow them, but but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're very, they just are these beautiful, neat pieces that I think are so interesting and thoughtful, but it also in thinking about them in a different way, I think is a really important way of looking at looking at contemporary art, but also kind of trying to re-understand it.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I think objects can reveal different things depending on, what they're connected to, how they're shown. And I think bringing an artist into it in that way, I think will help them say different things.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So this is just like a little tiny project that I've been thinking about lately, and I'm excited about what will happen with that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
I
awesome.
think so. I think so too. So are you originally from Santa Fe?
I'm not. No.
Where are you from?
So I grew up first 7 years in Anchorage, then spent 8 years in Seattle, then I spent 12 years in Houston, and I moved here in 2008.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a lot of good friends from Anchorage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always so funny because they're Athabascan and I'm Navajo.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think that when I go outside to visit, or when I went to visit them, and they were in a smaller village outside of Copper River, that everybody there looked like they were from Shiprock. They all look Navajo to me.
That's so funny.
Which I love.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Window Rock, Arizona, and Saley, which is kind of right at the beginning of Canyon de Chelly, and I went to school in Chinle. And then I went to high school in Tempe. Both my parents got their undergraduates, and my mom got her master's at ASU, and my dad got his law degree there. I went to ASU, and then my sister went to U of A because she's, I don't know, weird.
See, that's not something I understand. There's something there, this competition, right, between the two schools.
Yeah,
is that right?
But no, so I grew up in Tempe, but I'd always worked in gallery. Did you always work in the arts?
Mostly. My degree was in photography and digital media, and I had every intention of becoming a studio artist.
Yeah, I got my degree in drawing, so yeah.
And just kind of, I think what happened okay, I need to make some money, so I got a job in the arts, and just really found I really loved holding space for other artists.
I absolutely agree. For me, I worked at the gallery, the student gallery at Arizona State University, the Harry Wood Gallery, and that's where all of the graduate master thesis shows happen. And so, as an undergraduate, a class you could take was actually installing the shows and doing all the PR for graduate students, and basically just running a gallery. And so, you could take that class over and over again, which I did. And so that's how I ended up getting into gallery work. And then eventually working for a nonprofit, like right outside of college in Phoenix called Mars, which was a Chicano art space, Movimiento Artístico del Rio Salado. And then, and actually a really great, important space. It was really, I was there in a really amazing time, a time when Lucy Lepard was writing Mixed Blessings and wrote about Mars and the impact it had on Chicanx artists at that time, back in the late 80s. And then from there moved to Washington, D.C., and I worked at the National Museum of the American Indian in D.C. for about 10 years. And then moved eventually back to Phoenix. Yeah. And then here in Santa Fe. Yeah. So, yeah.
Were your folks creative? Did they make work?
Yeah, my dad's a lawyer. My dad was a politician for 26 years. I'm both Navajo. They always were creative. My mom actually got her undergraduate, I think, in painting and jewelry, and so she was making a lot of jewelry at that time. And I used to have that big Scottsdale Indian jewelry show back in I think it was the late 60s, early 70s. And someone purchased a lot of her work at that time and was purchasing a lot of her work. And that collection actually ended up at the Philbrook. So my mom's work is in the Philbrook. Cool. But she, was she was an administrator. So she was the president of what is now called Dana College in Saley, and then was a nonprofit leader for urban Indians. And then my father was a state politician and a lawyer, a utilities lawyer. So he was a state politician for 26 years for District 3, and then worked for the Navajo tribe as their lobbyist and as their lawyer for many, many, many years. But now he paints.
Wow, that's so cool. Now he paints. That's great.
But they were both very, very creative people.
Yeah.
They were the ones who loved to go to My mom was on the Arizona Commission on the Arts, and she was on the Heard Museum's board. And so we grew up going to, art receptions.
Yeah.
And all of their friends were artists. And so, we ended up seeing a lot of really amazing artists when we were younger, and a lot of really amazing collections.
What a blessing. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, to kind of be kind of saturated that. It sounds like your parents are they still around?
Yeah.
Some pretty amazing people.
They are.
Yeah,
They're wonderful. They're wonderful. They like it up here too, so they kind of come up.
They come to Santa Fe often.
Yeah, they come to Santa Fe often.
That's cool. That's cool.
I think they've adopted it completely. For such a long time, it was all about civic duty and all about their people, and now they go dancing on Mondays and Fridays, and they gamble on Wednesdays. And Thursdays.
How sweet. How sweet.
Yeah, but they're great.
Yeah. So you have this show up that's going to be here for quite a while.
Right.
Are you already working on the next?
I am. I'm working on a couple of different kinds of things that are going on.
Anything that's shareable at this point?
Gosh, hopefully I'll be able to share it soon.
Yeah.
There's a couple of shows that I've been asked to help curate, and hopefully those will be announced soon. But I've already started to reach out to a number of different artists for those projects. And so I'm I've got like a good 3 or 4 projects on my schedule right now, which I'm so excited about. And who knew would actually, happen to me. I'm really blessed. I mean, it's a really, really wonderful time for me to be able to be here in Santa Fe and to be in such a wonderful community and be around people who are so incredibly supportive. That's the thing I love about Santa Fe so much. And I don't know about you, but I feel like this is the most creative that I've ever been in my career. I'm not sure if that's, I don't know. I just sort of feel like maybe it's this time for me, but I just feel so good about all the things that I've been thinking about and all the things that I've been working on. So
I
it's
totally
a nice
feel
time.
that. I'm about to turn 40, and this is the first time that I feel like I've run an art magazine before.
Right.
I did not know what I was doing. It tanked, and it was a great experience. But
I've got a lot of friends who have done art magazines.
Publishing is hard.
It is.
Oh my God. I don't recommend it to anyone. Good for you, Lauren Tresp out there. My goodness. She's brave.
Right. And Robert Centenary from Phoenix with Java Magazine. That's like another 25-year-old art magazine, I think, at least, if not longer.
Arts publishing especially is hard.
Yeah.
But, but this is the first time where I feel like I'm in sync with a lot of different elements of my life.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a lot of creative capability and the channels to express it right now. And yet I feel like I'm in conversation and collaboration with whatever is showing up at the same time. So there's a lot of I feel like there's a lot of confluence, I guess, happening right now. So it feels really rich and just like a lot of momentum. Yeah.
I agree. And those projects sort of come really easily for me. I think, for both of us, and I'm a lot older than you. But for me, it's always trying to do something that I think is important personally or relevant, and being Navajo, I want people to understand that reality.
Yeah.
And the exhibitions I curate, they end up being very kind of, they tend to be about policy or about self-determination or about Indigenous people around the world or what it is. And so I just really want to kind of connect in some way with contemporary issues and core tribal values. And for some reason, I sort of feel like that happens here in Santa Fe. Like people really understand it and appreciate it and know it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just really get it. And so for me, I just think, I just really want people to be aware that there are Indigenous people all over the world.
Yeah.
And what's important to those people.
Right.
And I think that, for both of us, I mean, using our imagination and metaphor and connecting with a whole bunch of multi-narratives, I think is how that happens, or how we achieve it. And I think it's like I said, just like you said, it's like a confluence. It's like a nice time. It's a really nice time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're lucky in Santa Fe and the Southwest in general. I mean, because there are these institutions that do promote Indigenous art, that do have these avenues of exposure and expression. I know there wasn't really anything like that in Houston.
No, I mean, that's why it took me a long time to get here. I've always wanted to be in Santa Fe, and it took me a long time to be able to kind of find that way of getting in and being, and working in a place that I really loved and all of that. No, I absolutely agree. And there's so many interesting people working on such thoughtful, practice and such thoughtful projects. I think it's really smart and interesting people.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I really do.
Can you think of a piece of art or an exhibition? It could have been a class, something that like really flipped your script on what art could do, what art was, or changed your trajectory in some way. If you can think of like either an artist in particular, or a particular piece of art, or an exhibition that you went to that was just like, oh, I didn't know art could do that.
Yeah. I mean, I've had this conversation. I've talked about this before, and a couple of other things that I've talked about, but it's sort of, I've always, what do people used to call it? Your aha moment.
Yeah, right.
Back in the 90s, and they had this. Well, it was like back in 1976, and it was the Freedom Train. And I don't think you were even born yet.
Wasn't.
So the Freedom Train was this exhibition on a train that traveled all over the country with basically a lot of objects from important collections, a lot of Smithsonian things. I'm not sure of exactly. And it actually, when I went in as a Navajo and as an Indian person, I understand the power of objects, and I appreciate it. I understand it, and I know it. And as I went into this exhibition, seeing things like for the first time, like Dorothy's shoes, or Martin Luther King's podium, or Abraham Lincoln's rocking chair, these things I really, it just sort of hit me all at once. I mean, I understand the power of objects, but for this also kind of turned me to a different corner, and I just, I think that's really kind of when it happened for me. That's when I was like, this is what I think I need to do. This is how I probably need to move forward. And that was really that was it for me. It's interesting because I worked as the curator for the city of Tempe, which is a town I grew up in Arizona. And we brought something called the Art Train, which was kind of like the Freedom Train. And it was out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And they had a native exhibition at the time, so it kind of would hook itself onto other trains going to other rural areas across the country, and people could request for the train to come, and you would set up in their hometown, and then you'd be able to see this exhibition, for places that might not possibly have museums. And so it was just this huge deal, and I was so inspired that I actually left that job and worked for Art Train for a couple of years. Yeah, just working on that project. It was fun because it was I got to travel with the exhibition a tiny bit, and then obviously I brought it to Tempe, so I knew how it was installed. But then I also got to fundraise and work on a number of different things, a lot of development. In working and trying to make sure that the show was successful. And it was just, it was so much fun. But I don't know, for some reason, I just love that idea of being able to, get exhibitions to people in a different kind of way. But then also, this whole backstory of me and being so excited about, this Freedom Train. So
could you see yourself doing a traveling exhibition on a train at some point?
I don't, I'm wondering, I wonder if they, by the time I left, there were some things, with being on a train. I think that they started doing a lot more of shipping through trains versus trucks. And so the train stopped being as available to the art train. I think because I don't know, coal was less or more expensive or gas was cheaper. There was like all these sort of kinds of elements that came into play that I wasn't sure. And so I think that they were looking at alternative ways of doing that. Maybe there's going to be like a museum in an RV or a museum in a semi-truck or something.
Cool. That'd be cool. Well, I think about like Amtrak on the East Coast where you have a lot more passenger traffic. Yeah. Like what if one of those cars was like a museum?
I think that would be fantastic.
Right?
Yeah. I love, I don't know if you've ever done this. One of the exhibitions that I curated was actually at the Northern Museum of Arizona in Flagstaff. And so you can take the train in Albuquerque to Flagstaff. It's the best thing ever.
I've never done that.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I think you leave Albuquerque at 4 and then you get there at like 9 or something. But, you go through all of, you go through Winslow, you go through Gallup, you have dinner, kind of going through this amazing, beautiful landscape. And then you show up there, you can have a drink. They have kind of like these passenger, cars where you can kind of sit up in some kind of weird 70s looking, just enjoy yourself. But yeah, it's such a great experience. I love that.
That sounds like a nice like surprise date weekend or something.
Right? Exactly.
Like, pack your bag, we're going away for the weekend. Surprise, we're on a train.
Right. Yeah. And then you get to Flagstaff and boom, you're right downtown.
Oh, that's
right
cool.
Downtown. It's great. Yeah.
How neat.
You got to do that.
I think
like,
I will.
Look at me.
My wife listens to the podcast too, so I won't say too much.
I do. I mean, but I love that idea of, I constantly thought about the train from Albuquerque to Santa Fe and what kind of programming could happen on that. Can you
draw?
That
Lamy train that I don't think is doing anything anymore.
Oh.
I mean, maybe in the summertime it takes people back and forth.
Right.
But I think they might have stopped that.
Huh.
But...
yeah, I mean, I always think, could you do drawing courses on there? Like I saw like, it was so funny, like the transit system in Phoenix has these like really funny things that they do to encourage people to ride the train. And I'm not sure that it was to go over in New Mexico, but it was like pantsless day, for the, I don't know if you saw that in Phoenix. It was like, I don't know if that's going to work so much in New Mexico, but you know what I mean? They're always, I think they did one where they had bands in the like, so in different cars, you'd have a different band for every, like stop, they would get off and someone else would get on and play.
That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I really am intrigued with that idea of, programming.
Transit and arts programming.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay,
there has to be something that we can do there.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun.
Of course, there's Axel. They've got their mobile gallery.
And I'm on their board.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah. Perfect.
Because I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
We need to get you an RV to outfit. That'd be so cool.
I know, it was perfect. I think I told them the Freedom Train story, and that's why they felt obligated to put me on that board. No, I don't know if they did or not, but no. Yeah, but I do. I love it. And it's funny because you can go all over the country. I was in Portland at an art space, and there were two younger women who were doing an installation in an old, like, 1976 Ford Bronco. So you can kind of sit in there, and I was like, I don't know. Do you know Matthew Chase Daniels? And they both were like, do you mean Axel Contemporary? And I was like, yeah. And they're like,
great.
They're our heroes. You know what I mean? So they're inspiring people like all over the place. And so there was this, I think that there's a lot at their reach is very far.
That's so neat.
Yeah.
It makes me think of, although it wasn't moving, the vehicle wasn't moving. New Mexico School for the Arts had this performance where they were in a parking garage and they had several cars. And you could get in the cars, and they were acting. Like the driver was acting. There was other passengers in the car, and they had this whole sort of script and dialogue that they were going through, where you were like in the car, but it was like a performance just for you. It was so cool. I loved it. Awesome. It's like, and you had to take turns. Like as soon as you got out, somebody else would get in, and they would be acting out this performance in the car in this parking garage. It was so neat.
It's like kind of like Universal Studios, like back in the 70s when, they'd have the background behind you. And,
You're right.
You know,
earthquake. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else going on we need to plug?
Gosh, I'm trying to think. There's so much. I mean, there's all kinds of really great programming here at the Wheelwright, but there's all kinds of really great programming everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, that's the amazing thing about Santa Fe, I think, is that, you know, you can't blink your eye without seeing some kind of amazing thing that happens here. I guess I would just encourage your visitors to make sure to come to the Wheelwright.
Yeah.
If I'm around, I'm always happy to do a tour. And to, I think because it's 2020, we should all kind of get out of our comfort zone and kind of try to do things that we probably haven't done before.
Yeah.
You know, explore a little bit more.
Yeah.
I've been trying to do that myself and take chances, take risks, do things that I'm not comfortable doing.
Mm-hmm. What are you not comfortable doing?
I can't say, but you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just do it, get out there.
Right.
So
I know as locals, you have a hard time coming to Canyon Road, so you can push yourself and play tourist and come up to Canyon.
That's right.
And then go over to the Wheelwright. And
you know, it was amazing. I actually took a photograph of, like, I went to your shop and I bought those beautiful pink sake glasses. And they're ceramic and they're like this sort of hot pink glaze on them that's just gorgeous. And then I turned them into salt and pepper shakers, and I took like this photograph of them and put it on Instagram, and I don't know, what does it have, like 500 likes or something? People like flipped out.
Oh goodness. Yeah, that's
Everybody
great.
needs to go over to your store and see those things.
Cool. So humor and resilience in native art through at least another year. And is it wheelwright.org?
Yes, it is. It's wheelwright.org. So look it up. And then obviously, so Laughter and Resilience. And then Laughter, Resilience, Humor in Native American Art. And then the other exhibition, Conversations, Artworks and Dialogue, the Daniel E. Prahl Show, which is a beautiful kind of who's who of Native American art, kind of like the rock stars, and a beautiful space here at the Wheelwright. And just coming up here is ridiculous.
Seriously.
And it's just shockingly beautiful.
Seriously.
I mean, it really is. I mean, look at, you don't have, like, we're sitting in my office.
It's gorgeous.
I'm surprised a deer hasn't walked by at this point.
It's so nice. I mean, I was standing in front of the museum doors, just looking at the mountains, man, it's so beautiful here.
I know. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, the kind of thing that we have here every single day. I mean, we're blessed. We truly are.
All right. Thanks so much, Andrea.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Hopefully I didn't talk too much.
No, perfect. No,
Awesome.
This is great.
Come here,